Fire crews from multiple towns worked together to put out a house fire in Stoddard tonight. The fire started shortly before 6 at a house on Lake Road right near the river. When firefighters got on scene, there were flames coming out the windows. Crews from Stoddard, Coon Valley, Shelby, and Genoa worked together to get the fire put out quickly enough that the house is still structurally sound.
It's pretty gutted in there right now. The structure's pretty sound, the roof is still pretty sound. So our crews did a real good job, knockdown job on this. Having a big crew like this, having all the departments here, really, I mean, that shows what Vernon County can do.
The chief of the Stoddard Fire Department said there were multiple firearms in the house, but were fortunately in a different room than the fire. The cause of that fire still being investigated. Preparations are underway in Memphis, Tennessee for tomorrow's funeral of Tyree Nichols. The Reverend presiding over his service hopes to see renewed action on police reform going forward. CBS's Christian Benavides has the latest.
Thousands are expected at the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church in Memphis on Wednesday for the funeral of Tyree Nichols.
What did I do?
The Reverend J. Lawrence will preside over the service, and the Reverend Al Sharpton will deliver the eulogy. Lawrence tells CBS News he will focus on the 29-year-old's life and not his death.
We also want to make it a place for this family to find comfort and see the support and solidarity of this community that's coming around them.
The White House announced Vice President Kamala Harris will be in attendance.
This is about accountability.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats are trying to convince Republicans to help them pass the George Floyd police reform bill, which stalled in Congress last year.
We believe in protecting our communities, giving them the resources to succeed, as well as the accountability.
Lawrence hopes Nichols' death reignites the push for police reform.
I think this is going to be one of the defining moments of the contemporary civil rights movement, that his death will not be in vain.
Tuesday night, his family spoke at the Mason Temple Church, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his last speech.
We all Tyree now. That's right. And we're all going to stand up with this family.
5 former police officers are facing second-degree murder charges. The Shelby County District Attorney is considering filing charges against at least 7 others. Christian Benavides, CBS News.
The city of Memphis says it will release more footage from the night Nichols was beaten in the next few weeks after it completes its administrative investigation. In the meantime, we're learning more about a break-in that left 2 people with injuries in Chippewa Falls. The Chippewa Falls District Attorney officially charged Elijah Johnson and Jeremiah Mackey with armed robbery, substantial battery with intent to bodily harm, and use of a dangerous weapon. They were also charged with false imprisonment, criminal damage to property, and theft. According to a criminal complaint, the 2 broke through the door into an apartment where the 2 victims were living. Johnson used a gun to hit both of the victims and threatened to shoot them. Mackey tried to take one of the victims' phones as they were calling 911. A third person was also there and helped Mackey and Johnson steal a PlayStation 5 out of the apartment before being driven away. Everyone charged admitted to being involved. Mackey admitted to pawning the PS5. When one of the victims asked why the men would want to break in, they said they had been fighting over social media. Both Mackey and Johnson are currently free on bond. They will have another bond hearing on Thursday. A lawsuit is aiming to keep 2 referendum questions off Wisconsin's April ballot. The questions will ask voters about a constitutional amendment that will allow judges to consider more factors when setting bail, and ask voters about requiring people on welfare to look for work. The lawsuit, filed by criminal justice advocacy groups, claims the questions weren't submitted in time to the correct elections officials. Wisconsin Republicans may be willing to spend more state dollars to address PFAS contamination. The state Senate's Natural Resources Committee hosted an informational hearing today on the extent of the forever chemical pollution to determine potential cleanup costs. Communities across the state, including, of course, the town of Campbell, are dealing with contaminated water from the chemicals found in firefighting foam and nonstick cookware. That committee's chairperson says he wants to educate the legislature's Finance Committee on the cost to stop the problem from spreading even more. Governor Evers said in his State of the State address this month that clean water should be a top priority, and he called for $100 million to be spent on improved testing, awareness, and on-the-ground contamination response. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz signed the right to abortion and other reproductive health care rights into Minnesota law today. The bill makes sure the state's existing abortion protections stay in place even if the state Supreme Court make up changes in the future. After the midterm elections, Democrats took hold of both the state's houses of that legislature. Lawmakers rushed the bill through in response to the United States Supreme Court decision to reverse Roe v. Wade.
And for Minnesotans, what you're going to see now at a time when it becomes very frustrating watching the democracy, Minnesota's democracy worked great. Minnesota had a debate last year on the issues. We voted in near record numbers. Our votes were counted, they were secure, winners and losers were determined, and then policies moved forward.
This victory is for Indigenous women, for Native women, for Black women, for our LGBTQ+ neighbors and relatives, for low-income folks, for people who live in rural communities, and for everyone who has fought for sovereignty of their own bodies.
Abortion rights were already protected after a 1995 state Supreme Court decision that determined the state's constitution protects abortion rights. Now, opponents of this measure say it's extreme and it leaves the state with no restrictions on abortion at any stage of a pregnancy. Minnesota is the first state legislature to codify protections this year. La Crosse is celebrating a civil rights legend's birthday in a special way. This Saturday is Rosa Parks' birthday, and throughout the week, La Crosse MTU will commemorate with their Transit Equity Days. Community members can ride buses for free through Saturday, and local politicians will ride along to raise awareness about the civil right to transportation. A member of the La Crosse Area Transit Advocates Group says having access to public transportation is just as important as the right to water and shelter.
What kind of a community would we be if we say, sorry, if you can't get to the doctor, that's too bad, and leave it at that. I really do think that a community has an obligation to ensure that its citizens can get to places they need to go.
Today, County Board Representative Ralph Gary had a seat on one of MTU's many buses. Gary represents the north side of La Crosse. He says he looks forward to Transit Equity Days every year to help spotlight an important community asset.
I think it's a very good idea to recognize the good job the MTU does and the great service they provide, not only for the residents of the north side, but the city and the area, because it goes beyond, La Crosse.
The city provides rides to Vernon, Monroe, and Crawford counties through the Smart Bus. Fare will be free all day tomorrow. It can be hard to get out and get moving, especially in the winter time, but UW-La Crosse students are hoping to help elder community members stay active. Starting next week, you can walk with an eagle. AARP is collaborating with a class for a once-a-week stroll with people on campus. Those who sign up will be paired with a student. An assistant professor says this will benefit everyone.
We know that walking is great for our physical, mental, cognitive, but we also know that we can also increase our social connections. So connect to the campus community, connect to our students, and also gives our students an opportunity to kind of apply what they learn in the classroom.
The first walk happens on February 7th in the Student Union. Walks will be happening indoors until the weather gets warmer. And even though it's geared toward older members of the community, anyone 18 and older can sign up. There's no charge. We'll have more information on how to register on news8000.com.